Hello everybody, my name is Peter Falk, and today we will be going on a journey, a wonderful journey that you will all love and enjoy. I started you guys out here on the PB Works page just so you can take a quick look at some of the things I uploaded. We have a lecture from the real Grants who you will be learning about in a couple seconds. Various other links to help you on your learning journey. Yeah, I'm just showing you the PB Workspace so you're aware of what's up, and also show you how you can take the Prezi right from there and view it. Okay, so chapter 23, an introduction to evolution. It's pretty self-explanatory. Alright. Feature investigation. The grants have observed natural selection in Galapagos finches by Peter Falk. So this presentation is on a specific feature investigation that the book likes to have within a lesson. It describes a specific study done by certain scientists that help achieve a certain understanding of a topic. Okay, and we're moving. The Galapagos. The Galapagos are a series of islands to the west of continental Ecuador. The Galapagos are pretty much renowned for their diverse ecosystem. They have a lot of animals that are only really found on the Galapagos. Darwin famously voyaged around the Galapagos on his little boat called Beagle. Nicole is going to talk about that tomorrow in her presentation. That should be exciting. But yeah, the Galapagos, it's a tropical island. It's a gorgeous site. If you ever get a chance to go. Yeah, that's where Peter and Rosemary Grant went to conduct their study. Daphne Major, that was a specific little island used by the Grants to observe. Geospiza fortis. That's the technical nomenclature for medium ground finch, and that's a type of bird. And it is significant to observe Daphne Major because the isolation allowed them to observe a significant portion of the population, which should come. Here's a little video. That's the medium ground finch in action, in its habitat. That's the bird they observed, and you're getting a close-up look at that. You can see that it's relatively small. Yeah, that's the bird they looked at. And the same vein as they observed. You can see that. That's a picture of it right there. You can see that's its beak. Those are its eyes. That's a little branch that's So yeah, in the same vein as Darwin, they observed traits and how they changed over time within a small population. As I mentioned earlier, the small size of the island and its relative isolation made it easier for the Grants to observe a significant portion of the population, significant enough to achieve data that is worth publishing. The major trait, they observed lots of traits, but one of the biggies was beak size, this fella here. They observed how it changed over time. The Grants, Peter Rosemary, and colleagues measured the beak size of individual birds within populations. They physically grabbed birds and measured their beak size. That's how it worked. That's how real science worked. That's how they've been able to establish and get hard data behind the principles and tenets of evolution, even though it makes sense in a theoretical idea and on the realm of just, pure thought. They needed something to back it up and show that, hey, this does actually happen. So they decided to observe beak size, which is a trait. Ground finches have crushing beaks. That's how they eat. They crush seeds with their mouths to crush various different sizes. Large beaks crush large seeds, whereas smaller beaks are better for crushing smaller seeds. Now this comes up later. That's important to note that large beaks are good for large seeds. Small beaks are good for crushing small seeds. They were able to determine that beak size is transmitted from parent to offspring, regardless of environment, and this indicates that differences in beak size are due to genetic differences in the population. In other words, they found that beak size was a heritable trait, and it was passed from genetic to offspring, which is what I said earlier. The hypothesis. What was the central thesis of their exploits? Like, what was a guiding idea behind their explorations? Dry conditions produce larger seeds and may result in larger beaks in succeeding generations of Geospiza fortis due to natural selection. Now, we mentioned earlier that larger beaks are good for larger seeds and smaller beaks are good for smaller seeds. Well, this kind of extrapolates upon that idea, and it says that they're testing the idea that succeeding generations of medium ground finches will have larger beaks as a reaction to droughts. So you will see the difference in beak size. The average beak size will increase after drought, but during times of more moderate or wet climate, the beak size will decrease because the organisms with smaller beaks will have a better chance of surviving. And that's due to natural selection, which is a fairly self-evident idea that nature selects the most fit organisms to survive, that organisms best suited for their environment will live longer than those that are not. Okay, the data. Let's really absorb this, okay? At the first graph, it shows on the left-hand side, it says number of birds measured. On the right-hand side, its beak depth in millimeters. Now, this is the F. It is the P. This is the P generation for parents. As you can see, they observed about quite a few birds, and you see that the average beak size. See, I don't know if that's going to show up, but you can see my mouse. It's about 9.2 millimeters. Now, these are during wet climates. Well, not wet per se, but normal weather patterns, and the beak size that's about average of where it probably should be for the birds, and that's in quote-unquote normal conditions. That's where it would be. You see that the offspring of these, the average beak size, beak depth, actually decreased a little bit. That's because in normal there's generally going to be more smaller. There's going to be more competition for smaller seeds, and the smaller seeds are more readily gotten by birds with smaller beaks because they move faster. So that's how that can be attributed. But you see, in 1978, which is only 2 years later, which is significant, which is it's a significant thing to point out because oftentimes evolution is only observed on large scale, but as you can see, you can observe changes within populations over the course of 2 years, which is really quite astounding, that unfolding between your very eyes, unfolding in front of your very eyes, you see natural selection weeding out the best. Well, not the best, but the best suited for their environment. So you see post-drought, the average beak depth increased to about 9.8 millimeters, up from 8.8 in 1976, the offspring of these. So it went from 8.8, so the average beak depth of these offspring was 9.8 millimeters, which is significantly more. Now this is attributed to natural selection. The best offspring survived because they had larger beaks, so they could crush the larger seed sizes. It's pretty straightforward. In times of drought, the better suited organisms for their environment survive, but this is just data that proved it, and they were able to show it through actual collective study, not just through theories. What the data means: the average beak of the depth did increase as a reaction to the changing seed size. The conclusion. This is the conclusion that was given in the book as what the grants concluded about their study. Because the drought produced larger seeds, birds with larger beaks were more likely to survive and produce. The process of natural selection produced post-drought offspring that had larger beaks compared to pre-drought offspring. Now, yeah, the grants they're still around and kicking. As I told you before, they did at least did a lecture at Stanford that I have on my page. It's fairly interesting that discusses really pretty in depth in evolution. This feature investigation is important. So, because it shows the actual, well, I don't want to say actual science, but the real practical nature that was necessary to take in order to, I guess you could say, quote, prove evolution. And it basically, they were able to observe natural selection at work, which is a pretty remarkable thing that they were able to go to this island, measure the beak depth, and then be able to say that this can be attributed to certain things and watch certain organisms survive and certain organisms not, and see that that was the process of natural selection at work, which eventually leads to evolution and all that good stuff. They saw it on a small scale within one trait, but this can be done on a large scale. Okay, thank you for listening and watching. I hope you found this lecture very informative and it kind of discussed in greater depth what you may have missed in class. And yeah, have a great day or not. The choice is yours.